Welcome to Reddit Aliens. What horror movie type situation have you been in? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. When I was 11 years old, two of my friends had a sleepover at my house and we snuck out to go to the store and buy candy. It was probably about 11 p.m. or later at night. On the walk back, about a block from my house, a small car pulled up next to us and the driver got out. He immediately started chasing us. We turned and ran. We dropped all our candy and jumped 2 fences, and he was still behind us. I was in the middle, my older friend was about 10 to 15 feet in front of me, and my other friend was slower and about 20 plus feet behind me. I rounded the corner of a house and saw my buddy standing on a random porch, ringing the doorbell and screaming. I stopped on the porch and waited for my slower friend to appear. After what felt like forever, maybe 3 seconds, he came flying around the corner with the guy right behind, reaching out to grab him. It was too dark to see his face. The guy stopped when he saw us standing on the porch ringing the doorbell and suddenly turned and ran back around the house and out of view. A woman answered the door and called the police for us. The police came, but they never found the guy. This was just a couple of months after a kid named Jacob Wetterling had been kidnapped about 200 miles away, right in front of his friend. He was also 11 years old. He was never seen again. I still see those 2 friends I was with from time to time. It was almost 25 years ago, and we still believe we escaped death that day. This happened to my boyfriend's mom. They lived in a small ranch-style house that the dad added additions to, making it a bit of a puzzle house with sliding glass doors in multiple places. Some of the bedrooms were tucked in the back, while others opened up to a screened porch. One night she woke up and could just feel someone staring at her, but she shrugged it off and went back to sleep. The next night, her parents were gone, and it was just her and her younger brother. That night, when they went to bed, she locked her bedroom door just in case. She woke up in the middle of the night again, but this time it was to the rattling of her doorknob. She started to scream until she heard her brother knocking and pulling at the door. She jumped up and let him in her room and told him about the doorknob. She was convinced it happened, but he hadn't heard anything. They were freaked out, but didn't really know what to do, so they went around the house and locked all the windows and doors before going back to sleep. The next night, the parents are home, and she tells them about feeling like someone is watching her, trying to get into her room. Her parents don't really believe her, but every night her dad walks around the house with her to lock the doors and windows. She starts to feel a little bit better and goes back to sleeping with her door unlocked. A couple of days later, she wakes up again in the middle of the night, feeling like someone is watching her. She starts screaming until her dad runs in the room. They search the house, and once again they couldn't find anything. At this point, she is so terrified she started sleeping in her parents' bedroom. A couple of days pass and nothing new happens. Her parents try to convince her to move back into her bedroom, but she isn't having any. One night, her dad woke up and went to the bathroom, which had a window overlooking the backyard. He saw a shadowy figure moving around and heard some noises like someone was trying to break in. He, once again, looks around the house but can't find anything. Since all the doors were locked, he went to bed, thinking he was feeding his daughter's paranoia by even considering something was happening. The next morning, he wakes up and goes to look around the outside of the house. It had snowed during the night, and there were fresh footprints leading to each window and door. It looked like someone had tried every entrance to the house, but because of the nightly ritual, they were all shut and locked. He couldn't believe that someone was actually trying to get in, and on top of that, was probably entering the house every night his daughter heard it. However, the footprints also made a trail away from the house that the dad followed. It led to a house in the neighborhood where a mentally handicapped boy was living with his parents. Apparently, he was sneaking out and into their house to watch the daughter sleep at night. He was still trying, even though all the doors were locked, and without the snow tracks, they may not have found out. Sometimes stories are straightforward. Sometimes they move around a little bit. And sometimes they're like this next one. I went to see some puppies and discovered a household right out of Deliverance. I liked the pups though, so I decided to get out of there and bring my adult son back with me to check out the dogs. When I told him about the creepy vibe I got, he laughed at me, saying he was sure I was exaggerating. The next day, I called the man to make sure he was there, and my son and I made the 5-mile drive to see the pups. He'd moved them and insisted we had to walk through his house to go get them. The house was a garage built into the side of a dirt mound. It was almost entirely dark with partitions of sheets and cardboard boxes. My son's body language made me sure he too was now creeped out. We went outside. It turned out my son liked the same pup I liked, and we made the trip through the house again. My son got into the truck, and I reached for my purse as he turned the ignition. The price for the pup was $50, but as I counted the money, the man said, "For you, it's 20 and a hug." With that, he pulled down his overalls and grabbed me, one hand on my ass, the other going for my breast. My son freaked out and yelled, "Let go of my mom!" As I pushed him back and leapt in the truck. We were rolling down the driveway, gaining speed as I tried to get all the way in. My son was freaked out, telling me that at one point he thought this guy might take out a shotgun and make us stay. It didn't end there though. By the time I got home, just a 5-mile drive, there was a dozen bizarre messages on my phone. I had a stalker now. His calls became increasingly weird, and warning from my son and others did not deter him. The call that caused me to contact police was chilling. He described what I'd been wearing the night before. He'd been on the property I live on, 25 acres that is about half woods. It seems he was in the woods watching me, investigating it. It seems he'd watched me on a number of occasions. The police were really great, and he was arrested, but for some time he made me scared in my own home. Once when I was a kid, maybe 7 or 8 years old, my parents went out for the night and left my sister and I in the care of our older sister and 2 teenage cousins. Around 10 p.m. or so, the doorbell rang, and I went with my sister to see who it was. There were hooded men standing on the porch. He saw us through the window and started slamming on the door, and my older sister made my younger sister and I hide under a bed while they called the police. It's not really horror movie quality, but as a 7-year-old kid, it freaked me the hell out. Came home from football practice one afternoon to find front door slightly ajar, blood covering the kitchen counters, phone off the receiver, corded home phone, imagine that, bloody footprints leading to the garage, and a blood-covered knife lying on the kitchen floor. Sister had been cutting sausage that wasn't full thawed and ended up severing an artery in her left hand or thumb. Mom had come home and immediately rushed her to the hospital without time to clean up or make the house less murdery. It was my senior year of high school. On a warm May evening, I was getting ready for bed when I heard yelling coming from outside. I ignored it until I finally crawled into bed. It wasn't long after I closed my eyes that I heard, "I want to F you," through my open bedroom window. I was confused, so I got up and looked out my window. There was my neighbor standing at the fence that divided our yards, looking up at my window. I was pretty freaked out, and I contemplated whether or not I should tell my parents, but it was dark, and I didn't know whether or not he was yelling at me or at someone else that I couldn't see. I didn't know him very well. We had never spoken before. I didn't think there was any real reason to make a fuss over it. The next morning I was home alone, getting ready for school. I see my neighbor putzing around in his yard, and we make awkward eye contact through my living room window. I didn't think anything of it. Close to 8:30 that morning, I hear my dog tied up in the back of the house barking, and it started to sound vicious. As I'm in the bathroom, I can hear the back door open. I casually thought it's just Mom, but in the back of my mind, I had a strange feeling it was my neighbor. My gut feeling was right. To this day, I am so thankful that I had listened to that small voice in the back of my head. We met up in the kitchen. There he was, standing 5 or 6 feet from me with an 8-inch kitchen knife in his hand. I'll never forget the look on his face. He looked afraid, almost as if he didn't want to go through with what he was going to do. At the same time, he had this crazy look of lust in his eyes. He said, "Don't move." The only thought going through my head was, if you want to live, run now. You know when you have those nightmares where someone is chasing after you, but your body just feels really heavy? That's how my body felt at exactly that moment. I wanted to faint, and I'm so glad that I didn't. As I ran out of the house, I remember screaming, "No, no, no!" I fell down the front stairs leading up to our porch, got up, and I must have knocked on 2 or 3 different houses before someone finally answered the door. My town's entire police force showed up. The guy ended up going back to his house. I guess he was in an unsuccessful recovering alcoholic and had drank 2 liters of vodka the night before. He admitted to the police that he had been watching me through my bedroom window for months. When the police searched his home, they found photos of me that he had taken that explained in explicit detail what he wanted to do to me. TL, DR. Neighbor came into my home with a knife. I was able to escape. How would you react if you received this same phone call? My wife had gone out with her friends down to a local bar. I was sitting watching TV about midnight and she called me. Her voice immediately got my attention because I could tell that she was scared. She told me she had left her friends and walked to the car. She admitted later on it was stupid, which was parked in a lot around back. This guy followed her out of the bar and walked slowly behind her. He then started asking her for a ride and telling her how cute she was. So she is starting to cry, and I can hear the panic in her voice. I told her to go back to the bar, but she said she couldn't. Then, click. Dead air. Effing panic mode kicked in. The bar was 5 minutes from my house. I ran downstairs. My brothers lived there, told his girlfriend to listen for the kids and grabbed my brother and his 2 friends. We all hopped in the car and screwed down the street. Just as we got close, my phone rang again. It was my wife. She had jumped in the car and took off. She said she might even have knocked him over because he was pulling on the passenger door handle. She came home and kept waking up crying and scared. Really sucky night. In 1990, I was 5 years old. A couple of friends down the street and I would ride bikes near a park with a wooded area that had some trails from time to time. I was at their house playing around in their yard when they jumped on their bikes and asked if I wanted to go to the park. I said I had to ask my parents if it was all right for me to go, but my parents denied me permission to go since it was getting to be later in the afternoon. I imagine I was upset, but whatever. I just went and played Nintendo or whatever. Anyways, the 2 boys went missing, and I can't remember how long they were missing for, but after a search effort, they were both found in the woods dead, nude, and strangled with their own shoelaces. It's not something you fully understand when you're told as a 5-year-old. I know I had to talk to the cops about it at one point, but I don't really remember any of the details. Now that I'm older, it creeps me out. This next story could have ended very differently if not for great timing. I was almost kidnapped once. It was about 3 in the morning and the toilet exploded, flooding both my and my sister's bedroom. We decided to spend the rest of the night at our aunt's house. My sister and I are impatient to get back to sleep, so we want to wait for Mom in the car, but the car is locked. So we're just standing there shivering in the driveway as Mom runs around in the house. Then, this brown car with unlit headlights pulls up to the edge of our driveway. I remember a man with a tan hat rolling down the passenger window and calling out to us. He was asking me how to get out of the neighborhood. I was really confused because the neighborhood was basically just a big circle and the exit was clearly visible from our driveway. My sister and I pointed toward the main street, but the man didn't leave. Instead, he got out of his car and started walking toward us. We were really shy normally, but faced with this giant man, we were petrified. Looking back, I really had no idea how to handle this situation. I was torn between being rude to a stranger and being afraid of one. He kept asking over and over, "How do I get back to Johnson Street?" And I kept saying, "It's right there." But he just kept walking closer and closer to me. I climbed onto the hood of the car and frantically watched for my mom. My sister had crouched down and was hiding under a wheelbarrow in the garage. Fortunately, I don't think he knew she was there. He got within a few feet of me before my mom bust out the kitchen door screaming, "Who the hell are you? Get the F away from my children." She looked like a crazed mad woman, wearing nothing more than her PJs and a bathrobe. She went straight for him like she was going to kill him, but he quickly ducked back to his car and drove off. It's kind of a long story, and I apologize for any typos since I'm on my phone, but it was definitely one of the scariest moments in my life. It was my junior year in high school, and I was 16. I was with my girlfriend and another couple, and we decided we would spend our night hot tubbing. It's not very late, maybe around 9:15 p.m., and we're just sitting and talking with each other. Eventually, we start to talk less and focus more on our significant others. We're all having a good time and paying absolutely no attention to our surroundings. After about 30 minutes, the other girl, not my girlfriend, looks up and says, "That's really creepy." We follow her stare, and on the sidewalk just outside the fence of the pool, there was a man. He was sitting on his bike, wearing a gray hoodie with the hood up and a black backpack. He He was just sitting there, looking down at something he was fiddling with in his hands. It was dark, so I couldn't tell what it was, but we had no idea how long he had been there or what he was doing. We ignore him for a minute or so, but now he's staring at us. I can't see his face because of the shadow from the hood, and he's starting to creep us all out. We slowly get out of the hot tub when he suddenly turns around and rides away really quickly on his bike. We were gathering our things off a table and getting ready to leave when he comes back. He rode his bike all the way around the block to get onto the other side of the hot tub without us noticing, but I did. I alerted the others and we really started to get scared. This man was watching us and trying to hide from our view. He had rode his bike down into a grassy field that wasn't lit by any streetlight, so we couldn't see where he was, but we knew he was there. We grabbed all of our belongings and exited the gated hot tub and quickly got into our cars. As we began to drive away, our headlights shined into the field and we saw him hiding by a tree. He had gotten off his bike and was standing next to a tree. Our headlights hit him straight on and we could see him clearly. He was wearing an effing mask, staring straight at us. We got the hell out of there and never went back. To this day, we never knew how long he had been watching us or what he had in his mind for us. TL, DR, watched by a man in a mask, feared death.